those who have the power and those that are relatively well off, right, including probably you and me, we benefit proportionally much more than actually the people bearing the brunt in terms of climate change, right? Or the people that live in, poorer countries, when we hear of Kenya, but of course there's also other countries where these human laborers that I mentioned before, right, work to clean up algorithms, and they're the first ones to feel the impact of climate change, and at the same time, tools, large language models, the ones we know, the big ones we talk about, they work in English and they work in a number of big languages. But the people that suffer a lot from, say, climate change are also the ones using, speaking different languages, perhaps being due to the digital divide, just not able to use, the internet at all, at least not broadband, and probably will not see ChatGPT for a long time. So I think that's also something we need to keep in mind, right? This bigger picture and this broader global social justice. I find this important.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the D4 Data Channel podcast. I'm your host Deepak, and with me we have Alice Schmidt. With over 25 years of experience at the forefront of social, environmental and economic affairs, Alice has traversed 30 countries on 4 continents, collaborating with renowned organizations like UN agencies like European Commission, the African Union, the World Bank, and numerous NGOs and social enterprises. In this podcast, we'll discuss Alice's contribution towards the world of sustainability and even about her new book as well. So it's a pleasure to have you here today, Alice, and thank you for accepting my invitation.
Hi, thank you for having me, Deepak. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, thank you so much. So I have a couple of questions lined up, and before getting into the questions, I would like to actually I'd like to congratulate you regarding your new book. So could you actually share some of your experiences with this new book actually?
Yeah, the book. Writing a book and publishing a book is always a bit like giving birth. So it feels like a great relief. But of course, with a book like this, you're also on a mission, right? There's a message, and you do want to get it out. And I'm glad for this opportunity. What was very clear in this endeavor was that I couldn't write the book on my own. Yeah. So like you said, I'm a sustainability expert, and sustainability already is a very big and complex topic. Concerning things like a circular economy, things like climate action, right? But of course also social sustainability, responsible business, consumption, etc. And I actually co-wrote a book a couple of years ago on sustainability, right? And I did that with Claudia Winkler. And at the time, it was clear that technology, including AI, was going to be a piece of the puzzle. Ethical, responsible technology, tech for good, these are the kind of things we wrote about. But personally, not coming from a tech background and really looking at so many other sustainability issues already, I never thought I'd write an entire book on AI, right? What was also clear is that, with Claudia coming more from a sort of impact entrepreneurship experience and me more from a, sustainability, international, global sort of experience, we needed more people to co-write this. So we got 2 more people on board. And I think this collaboration is exactly this collaboration across disciplines is exactly what we'll need if we are to harness AI for good and actually, reduce the risks and maximize the opportunities. And we try to sort of do that in an exemplary way. And it was a very interesting process, right? Very often we did not agree. Yeah, we represented both sides, like the doomsters and the optimists when it comes to technology. But in the end, we had this kind of dialogue that I think societies overall need to have, right? So it was a very interesting process. And then, after just 6 months, this book came out, and we're really quite happy about it. So I'm glad you're asking me about it. Yeah, I'm very happy to talk about details.
Great. It's really impressive actually, and we would like to even get to know more about it. So, so my first question. So, what are some of the key principles and guidelines that should follow to ensure responsible AI practices? So, the reason why I brought responsible AI is because, like, this is one of the most important stuff which we as AI practitioners, AI leaders, even business stakeholders, everyone should actually try to understand. And what are some of the potential risk associated with using AI in various domains, including work, education, and science?
Yeah, so it's a very good question, and I think an important topic to start with, because everyone that's involved in, designing, selling, using AI, will need to take responsibility, right, for the outcomes, essentially, right? And so I really like this hashtag of responsible AI and ethical AI, and I think people could have discussions about what the difference is, but it is really important. And the good thing, I think, is that these principles aren't particularly controversial, right? Large global organizations like the OECD, for example, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, right? Or the European Union, for example, they all agree. And I've never heard anyone say that they're against responsible AI. So I think that's really good. I think very often, though, when people talk about responsible AI, they don't quite know exactly what it is, right? Or they haven't got the experience in working, say, in the social sectors, in environmental protection, in sort of democracy, in order to really understand the implications. And of course, the principles we're talking about are things like accountability, explainability. Also, transparency is super important. What actually goes on, right, inside an AI model? What does the algorithm actually do? How does it come up with the results it comes up with? It's also about, related to that, of course, it's also the human authority that's very important. Also fairness, right? In the end, of course, you want the principles include things like data quality, privacy, data governance, robustness of models, safety, security. What do they do in edge cases? Those kind of principles, and there are different ways of grouping them. But in the end, like I said, the good news is that these aren't particularly controversial, right? One reason why I think this is so important is because good intentions are not the same as good results, right? A lot of the time, people that develop AI, programmers, data scientists, tech companies, actually mean really well, and they very strongly believe that they're contributing to a better world, right? To sustainable transformation, when they are not necessarily equipped to actually understand the full impacts, right? Both positive and negative, just because that's not their background, right? And that's why it's so important for, people like you in the end, like techies, right? I guess a lot of your listeners will also be techies, and people from other disciplines to work together. And one other thing on this, me coming from this sustainability, sustainable development, UN responsibility kind of background, it's always been clear that whatever you do in your work is actually about humans. It's about responding to human needs. It's about maximizing human health, wealth, and well-being in the end. Yeah, that could be one definition of sustainability, putting humans first. And I was very naive because, of course, a lot of people that work in the technology space have very different goals, right? For them, often the goal is really to develop a technologically fascinating solution, and they do that. And so this concept of digital humanism is actually one that we talk about a little bit in the book as well. Again, for people like me, this is something, it's almost surprising that you need to talk about it, but it's very clear that you need to talk about it. And yeah, so that's one additional principle, I would say, of ethical and responsible AI.
Right. So, considering the broader implications of AI, like how can we bridge the gap between tech experts and individuals from different diverse disciplines, actually, and how we can kind of shape the future of AI in a much better way?
Yes, great question again. So how can we do this, right? I think this is the multi-million-dollar question here. It's, of course, the main message in our book, that we need to do that. We need to bring people together for the reasons I've started outlining just before. So first of all, I think this really starts with recognizing that there is a gap, right? That we are talking different languages, we're living in different worlds, we are motivated, incentivized by very different systems in a way, right? And when I say we, I mean, there's a lot of diversity, of course, but to make it simpler, I'm sort of distinguishing between techies and non-techies, yeah, and I think you know what I mean. Of course, there's nuances, yeah, in both sort of on both sides, but recognizing that there is a gap, trying to really understand what the drivers are that sort of shape decisions, that shape development of technology in the respective world, I think is really important as a start. Very importantly, also people like me, right, who are relatively new to tech and to work on many other issues as well, they need to step up to their role. And I know that a lot of people like me are very reluctant to engage in technology. They feel that's something they don't understand. They haven't been, trained to understand. We all know that STEM education, right, is one that we really need to promote more. So a lot of people are quite resistant. Yeah? And so another message really here is we all have responsibility for minimizing the risks and maximizing the opportunities of AI in our societies. And so that's another important step. And in the end, this is very much about practical collaboration, right? Involving experts from all disciplines in developing models, in choosing data sets, in training algorithms, etc. In practice, how do you do that? Well, you bring people together at conferences, you support research in that area, research also on impacts, of course, right? You create funding streams. I think that's also important, that explicitly ask for involvement from both sides. And what I think is also important is that we don't just involve experts in the traditional sense, but actually users, right, who are experts on the user journey. And perhaps even more importantly, we need to involve people that so far haven't had access to the tools. Yeah, so people that, due to the digital divide or whatever other reason, are not traditionally confronted with these questions. Yeah, so that I think all of this can really help to bridge the gap. And finally, on this, transparency, is super important. Yeah, we need much more understanding of who is developing what, for what purpose, and again, of course, respect the principles of responsible AI.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I guess that sums it up for now.
Right. Yeah. So regarding the development of different AI stacks, how can we kind of leverage and promote ecological sustainability, and how we can actually balance the technology advancements, because it has multiple dimensions for this problem, like how we can kind of build the technology in a more sustainable way. But that itself means different aspects regarding, like, okay, should we promote environmental and ecological sustainability, or building a solution in a sustainable way? So I'm actually talking about the first one, how we can kind of build, or actually we can progress on technology without like hampering much of the environmental kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, and this is a very important question, and you already pinpoint to both components or both dimensions, right? So one is basically avoiding harm, yeah, so decreasing the ecological footprint of technology, digital technology particularly, and the other one is to actually create a positive impact, right? And we can only create a positive net impact in the ecological sphere if the negative impact is smaller than the positive impact, right? So that's basic math. So on the first one, in terms of how to minimize harm, first of all, we need to understand the footprint, right, that AI and other technologies actually have. Yeah, and we know in the bigger scheme of things, ICT overall accounts only for something between 2 and 3%, and the footprint of AI is lower in terms of emissions, in terms of carbon emissions or greenhouse gas emissions. And we also know that it's growing, right? So that's important. What a lot of people don't know is that an actually big component of this footprint is in the hardware. Yeah. So it's basically the gadgets you have, right? Yes, energy is an important part of it, but it's hardware as well, right? So on the hardware side, of course, it's actually, this is where we link with the circular economy, right? It's about prolonging the use of your hardware, right? Of making it repairable, of not throwing things away. And then it's also about how we deal with e-waste. Yeah, we know that at the moment, I mean, it's an atrocious situation, actually. Yeah, putting, people, even children at risk who somewhere in a sort of poor setting, have to dissect the hardware we don't need anymore, or the e-waste, right? So that really is an important one. But also, of course, in terms of energy, we can do a lot. Yeah, so energy is used in cooling servers, in energy for computation, and training models, etc. But also in the usage. And there are a number of things we can do. One is actually to smartly choose the location where your servers are located, right? And there's some data, I remember, that basically says that, for example, if you do that in Australia, the sort of the carbon footprint from computation is 73 times as high as if you did it in Switzerland, of course. And that's, because the energy mix is so different in those countries. Australia relying on sort of dirty coal mostly, right? Whereas Switzerland relies on renewable energy. So that's one thing. But it's also the time of the day that you run your calculation makes a difference. And also, data sets, models don't need to be as big as some people think. So all of that are tools to reduce the impact. Importantly, when we talk about the impact, we really need to take the entire value chain into account, right? The life cycle, if you will. And for example, Bloom does this, right? So that it's not just the energy. I think that's important, right? And then on the other side, we're not talking about minimizing harm. We're actually talking about creating a positive impact. And I feel very strongly about, environmental action, protection, restoration. And I actually honestly believe that AI is a tool to create a lot of positive impact there, particularly in the area of climate action, in terms of biodiversity protection, and then also in the circular economy. And of course, these three areas are related. And I could give you a couple of examples, perhaps. So for the first one, there's one tool which is called, I definitely don't pronounce this correctly, Umgrameyo. Yeah, basically that means 1.5 degrees. And that's a tool that helps companies detect wildfires within seconds, using AI. And it also then helps them to track fire brigades, etc. And of course, by reducing wildfires, by detecting them early, we can fight them early, and that has a positive impact both on on the climate. Well, it has it reduces the negative impact of a given wildfire on the environment, on climate, but also biodiversity. That's one aspect, right? Or there is a green algorithms project that actually helps companies or any developers of AI to measure the footprint. Yeah, so in line with what I've just said before. And in the biodiversity protection field, there is nature metrics, for example, that uses DNA and data to really analyze the biodiversity, right? In a given piece of land or soil, for example. And one area I find quite interesting is one tool, actually, it's the CAPTAIN application. CAPTAIN stands for Conservation Area Prioritization through AI. And so the idea is that AI helps you decide where, in a context of limited resources, you're going to spend these resources on protecting biodiversity, right? There is wildlife insights, which helps you track wildlife without human interventions. I also like the iNaturalist app, because it has this sort of the crowdsourcing implication. And then on the third issue, the circular economy, I think the ocean cleanup is a great example, because they partner with Microsoft, I think it is, to take out plastic that's in rivers, so bound for the ocean or in the oceans, and they can do that much better with AI. Yeah. So these are just a few examples. There's more in the book, but I really think this is an area of opportunity. Of course, it always depends on political will, on companies' intention, right? Whether we actually harness these tools for good, or just for personal, private gain or power. Yeah.
Right, right. You actually touched upon a lot of good examples, and this actually remind me of some of the practices which we do, like in our firm or like in our work line of work. So, like when we are using cloud services like Azure and others like from Microsoft, so like we can actually see where exactly which server under which region server the emission is actually higher. So
Excellent.
we can actually try to understand that, and then there are other tools actually like. There is something called Code Carbon. So Code Carbon is like an open source platform wherein like we can plug in whatever code we are running actually inside this. So it will kind of generate how much carbon we are emitting
Great.
when we are running something. So like it helps us to track actually like effectively. So, and one other thing which you mentioned, I can actually resonate it, like not always we need all large models actually, and whenever we kind of train large models, it definitely emit more carbon, and that we can see like because some of the production tools which we run are like 24 bar 7, and it is continuously running, and that's actually emitting that much carbon for sure. So it matters a lot, like okay, if we are actually reducing the model size by some mbs actually, like okay, instead of reinstating a gigs size into some mbs like 250 mbs model, it kind of changed the whole perspective, because like the amount of carbon which is actually being reduced, like it's significant actually. So these are some of the things which we noted like in terms of development, but still there is a lack of I would say there is a lack of understanding about these aspects in the developer community, because ultimately it's all like everyone wants to build solution, and actually
Mm-hmm.
really like at the first instance we want results, and actually we give rest of everything as second preference. But like more and more like books like this, then discussions, podcasting, like actually create a lot of awareness among young developers when they are actually, because one of the aspect which I am sure about is because whenever we are looking into new curriculum for data science and AI practitioners, they introduce this responsible AI and how we can build the technology in a more ethical and sustainable way. So these things are actually being like, when we started, we never had such a
Mm-hmm.
coaching actually, but now it's there. And maybe they will not be understanding at the point when they are learning, but after some time when they are into practice, maybe they'll be actually realizing this importance
Yeah, yeah,
basically.
yeah. Sometimes it takes a bit of maturity, but I think you're
Correct.
absolutely right to point to the need for education, right? We can't blame people for not taking it into account if,
Correct.
that's just not something that's done or sort of, taught in their world. But I'm really glad to hear that you're already really on top of this. Yeah. So we can exchange on best practice
Right.
perhaps, yeah, and models later on.
Great,
Great.
great,
Mhm.
great. So my next question. So, in the context of education and science, how can AI be utilized to enhance learning experience, facilitating research breakthroughs, and foster inclusivity in knowledge dissemination?
Yeah, so education science is, of course, a very big topic. And I feel a lot of people are particularly interested in questions like, what does ChatGPT now, or tools like ChatGPT, mean for education? How can we continue to teach and lecture if students are just, basically free to use large language models and come up with some result that may sound plausible? And so I think one of the first things I always say is, in a world that's so technology driven, human skills and knowledge remain equally important and perhaps become even more important, right? Because we still need to sort of master the machines, right? So in a way, perhaps they're more important than ever. We do need to keep human oversight. And I think that's a very important principle, human responsibility, human oversight, right? We must be able to understand what the machine does, basically, right? Now, and we still use calculators, but we still need to also understand the fundamentals of math. So I think that's very important. What has changed and what is now perhaps changing even faster is that we really, with tools like ChatGPT, that we're moving from knowledge to skills, right? In the past, it was really necessary for us to learn things by heart, to know our facts. Yeah, and there's still a lot of facts we must remember, but there's so much information, knowledge out there that we can't impossibly keep all the relevant information in our heads. And so we have it in our mobile phones or in Google or whatever search engine you prefer. And that's been like that for a while, right? But of course, with AI and AI being used by everyone consciously now, right? This move from knowledge to skills is even more important. And skills, of course, means media literacy, where to get the right information, how to check sources, who to collaborate with, when to decide to sort of work, to put in human power, and how to sort of share the labor with the machine. So I think that's really important. And AI is, of course, great at helping us access tailored knowledge. Yeah, so in the field of education, it has actually been around for years, trying to complement human teachers with sort of tailored tutoring. Yeah? So these intelligent tutoring systems have been around for a while. They're not all that intelligent, but that's an important thing. And I think it's also clear that AI does not make human teachers obsolete. Yeah? It complements them. But for example, by facilitating access to knowledge that no one teacher could have in their minds. And so the role of teachers, and I'm a lecturer myself, and a university lecturer. I mean, I do. This is a very practical challenge for me, or it's a journey, right? I'm on as well. So we become a bit more like facilitators, managers, but then bringing in the human touch, or keeping in the human touch, right? Because education, no matter at which level, is not just about filling people up with knowledge and skills. It's very much about the social aspects, right? The social skills. So teachers shouldn't be replaced, and I don't think they will be. But what I think will change is curricula, right? We will need to put even more emphasis on STEM teaching, so science, technology, engineering, mathematics, for example. We will perhaps move away a little bit from teaching young people foreign languages. Personally, I love learning foreign languages, and I think it's really important, for your brain development, for so many other skills. But in terms of practical needs, when you go to a different country, a different place where people speak a different language, it's just not really there so much anymore, right? So I think that is definitely going to change. In the end, we really must enable students to think critically more than ever. Yeah. So that's super important. And I want to give you a very positive example of AI in education, actually. So about the personal example, a personal experience. About 10 years ago, I was teaching a course on, actually was about inclusion, inclusion, poverty reduction, etc., at the university for master students. And there was one student who approached me who had hearing difficulties, and she basically asked me to be able to sit close to me, during lessons, to speak slowly and clearly, and to look at her so she could understand me, to look at her and face her, right, while speaking. And I had the best of intentions, and I promised that I'd make this work for her, and I was really, really motivated to include her in this class. And I failed miserably because I realized that by concentrating on her only, I totally lost my ability to teach, basically, because my teaching is very participatory. It's very much, walking around, engaging people. And basically I had the choice between focusing only on her and also doing something for the others. Yeah. And So I really failed, and the student sort of, unenrolled from the course, and I was sad. And now 10 years later, of course, that's changed completely, right? With voice to text applications, I can be much more inclusive, yeah? Or, I mean, inclusion. So this is a great sort of tool for including people in education. It's just one example, of course, right? So live captions, etc. Of course, in education, there's not just the actual teaching. There's also all the back end stuff, right, which AI can help with. But there are also some very concerning developments in terms of surveillance, right? Student surveillance. So during COVID, I think it became sort of fashionable to use e-proctoring, right, for exams, remote exams that students had to sit to make sure they wouldn't cheat. And that's in a way an intrusion in your, privacy. And one example that I think is particularly telling is from China, where apparently in quite a few schools already, it's common to have young students, including primary students, use headsets that are basically giving out brain signals to the teacher to allow the teacher to monitor how concentrated a given student is. And not only that, reports are created in sort of real time almost, and then sent to the entire group of parents. And so that's full on surveillance. Yeah. So, and we don't see this only in China. We see other types of surveillance through AI or facilitated by AI in the US and in other contexts. So I think that's clearly something we need to sort of grapple with as a society. Yeah. And then perhaps, in science, because, the two subjects or topics are related, there are a number of interesting examples in which AI can really very powerfully change the game, or in which it has changed the game. And one example is AlphaFold. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically it's a collaboration between Google's DeepMind and the EMBL, which is the European Molecular Biology Lab. And I do not want to go into the sort of details, right? Because this is quite technical. But basically, the tool they've developed together allows us to now understand pretty much every protein across all life forms: bacteria, viruses, humans, animals, plants, etc. Right? In the past, we as in scientists, were able to come up with about 3,000 structures per year, protein structures per year. And then when this collaboration between DeepMind and EMBL started, they had 365,000 in 1 year. And since then, this has developed to 200 million structures. And using these, we can be much sort of better and faster in discovering, developing drugs, medicines. This was one of the reasons why actually the mRNA vaccines, right, were able to be employed quite fast in the COVID pandemic. But this is also a key step towards personalized cancer treatment, right? So, and all of this is open access. All of this also reduces the need to use a lot of resources in training students. It facilitates multi-disciplinary collaboration. So it's a great example for positive use of AI in science and education. And I think there are many other examples, but I'm going to stop here for now.
No, I really I really appreciate you actually sharing all these experiences, and that examples are actually pretty interesting. And like a couple of things which came to my mind when you actually said about chat gpt and other AI tools. So like recently my friend she actually shared me one article which clearly states that chat gpt's performance is actually degrading. So the performance level, when they measured for 2 months, the initial month actually showed that much efficiency, but now the efficiency is actually like dipping. So this is actually expected. Like in the way any AI models, like whenever we do something in the technology as well, like there is something called drifting. The model will actually drift after some time, which kind of reduce the efficiency. But think of it like this: like we get so used to using all these tech stack, and we kind of rely on it with so much surety, and after that some point of time it kind of degrades and kind of lost its potential. So that actually creates a lot of impact in the way we judge things, we infer things, and way we even kind of take it up, like, because we completely rely on that. Like, I use ChatGPT for many things actually, and imagine, like, if tomorrow something is actually happening in terms of performance, then actually I need to actually find an alternative, or like, but that's like, like in my case it's fine, like, okay, I can actually still find. But think of it like in a very what to say, the examples which you mentioned regarding this drug development, imagine the potential of that actually kind of reduce over the period of time. Then we are actually playing with lives, and how can we kind of think of, like, okay, because that is where this all gets tricky, and that's where, like, people has to understand uh, what AI is capable, and rather than spreading out the misinformation that AI is actually going to kind of take away everything. So yeah, I just thought of that aspect actually.
No, absolutely, and that's a great example again. It creates this enormous dependency and very rapidly, right? And that's why I think the skills training is just so important, and why
Correct.
education, has and humans really need to upskill and reskill and keep those skills. Yeah, very very important point. Yeah, thanks for bringing
Correct.
it.
And even even there was a funny video, like, yesterday I watched. So it was in Instagram. Like, that video was actually mocking, like, okay, this is unbelievably good. That's what they actually said. But actually they were kind of hinting that this is unreal, because the slides which kind of outputting from these kind of AI tools, the notes which are actually being written, the message, the thank you note, so all these things feel so unreal at times, where we can't really kind of, because that's not human.
Yeah,
It's not how humans actually talk or interact. So that actually creates a lot of issues in the way we actually even communicate. Because, like, yesterday what happened is, I was actually testing my Apple series voice recognition feature, and today morning I understood that I had to send some messages to some people, but accidentally it actually sent messages to some other people.
hmm.
Because the name, the dialect, everything, it's like, maybe like my dialect is actually like maybe different, because that's not how
Yeah,
the models actually trained. But still it will be having that vocabulary in the mind. But still, like, what happened is, it actually sent to the wrong chat. Maybe, like, okay, out of the blue moon, like, okay, what if I accidentally make a mistake? It creates a lot of problems actually. So
yeah.
these are the things which we kind of know, because technology is there, but how to use it is something we definitely need to master it. So
Exactly. And then who keeps the responsibility, right? If something really
correct,
goes wrong due to this
correct,
issue, for example. Yeah. Yeah.
correct. So this is where, like, even in my team and the projects which we work on, like, so we mainly work on a product called ESG Fusion, which kind of calculate the sustainability score of a particular private equity firm, and by assessing all the, like, 100 plus topics related to environmental, social, and governance. And ideally what happens is, like, AI gives an output, and from there the researchers kind of use this output to kind of generate the insights. What if what if they are actually not even having that layer of human verification? So we are actually giving the entire output, so there can be mistakes, there can be wrong, like, okay, it can actually go wrong. And even when we are testing ChatGPT, we are still, like, unsure that whether ChatGPT output will be able to kind of match up with what we have currently. Because ChatGPT will give output, but how sure are we? Like, and the issue here is, like, for things like this, uh, for things where we have little bit of sensitivity, the problem is, like, we need an additional validation check for these kind of models output as well, which increases the workload again. So it's like we bring AI to reduce the workload, but now we need more resources to kind of see what is the output coming from these kind of AI models. So
Yeah.
ultimately there's a question like that, okay, whether it is kind of reducing the workload or increasing the workload in that way. So
Exactly. I mean, it also creates different jobs, right? And
correct,
it takes away jobs, it creates jobs, and then that's not sort of so much my topic. But one of the things I'm fascinated with, and that's also touches on the social sustainability of AI, is of course all these platform jobs, right? That we hear from or hear about, right? Where people are really, really poorly paid to basically train algorithms to be politically correct or to not how do you call it, like not to propagate, any terrible violence or criminal kind of images, etc. Right? And then these poor humans have to sit day in, day out, watch terrible scenes of violence and rape and what have you in order to clean the algorithms. I think that's something a lot of people don't realize. They think, in an automated world, or in a world where a lot of it is automated, surely we can get algorithms to do that. But actually we need humans. And I think that's really fascinating. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see where the journey will take us.
Right, right. And even a couple of things which really worries me is like the power is still actually lying with big corporates in terms of accessing these kind of large language models. Like even I think day first today, I think the Facebook actually released its large language model Llama with relation with Microsoft actually. So this is like a big competitor to ChatGPT, which is a paid service, but Llama is actually open source and anyone can use it. But even if anyone can use it, this model is so big. It's so
Yeah,
big.
and also malicious actors can use it, of course, right? I think that's
Exactly. Now anyone can use it, but the thing is like, okay, let's say we need to use it for something good, or like we need to use it for something like, okay, has a potential positive use case. We cannot simply do that in like the simple infrastructure which we have. We need the support, we need good compute, we need good infrastructure, everything. So that is on one side. And on the other side is like, let's say we need to actually use it for some other worst use case, like, or like something related to, yeah, potentially harming, like whatever it is. So these kind of things can be a problem. And actually the idea is like, okay, like the European Union actually came with this EU act in which they actually mention a lot of stuff, but still like it is, how well are we kind of using this, or how well are we kind of bringing that into the practice. So this is the level of maturity which we need, or like in the way we have to use. Because one of the things, like recently when we had a discussion within the team, within our firm, so we have a system, and let's say we need to bring all these large language models, and let's say we have a current efficiency of 70 percentage, and if we bring all these models it will shoot up to 73, 75 percentage. Do we need to still take it by incurring that much cost? Do we need to pay this much? Because every hit to ChatGPT API actually cost, and that is actually burning a lot of things somewhere else, which we really are like kind of, we are responsible for, sure. So that is a question, right? Like, okay, is it really worth increasing that percentage to actually 1 or 2 percentage by incurring this much cost, this much infrastructure, and so and so. And
yeah.
this is where like middle sized companies and small sized companies really struggle with using these kind of bigger platforms. Because earlier what happened is like 2018, 2019, 2020, these years, like Google open sourced the BERT model, and everyone was actually mainly relying on this model, because the BERT model is like not so big, but it is like we are fine tuning, we are training, retraining, we are doing a lot of building from scratch, everything. And after some point of time, this megabytes sized model started becoming gigabyte sized model, like, because all these large language models are like 6 GB, 7 GB, 30 GB, 60 GB. And imagine, like, okay, we need to hold this much size models in production, and when we are running it like this much time, like not all. So that's another thing, like not all will be also having a concrete use case to even build it. Because I
Yeah.
have personally seen outside people just use it for the namesake, like, okay, to actually getting attract, like, okay, we need attraction from clients that we are using all these latest service. But it will be actually simply can be built using a simple platform, like we don't really need all these bigger stuff. So
Yeah,
these are
exactly. And
some of the things.
there's then also this rebound effect, right? Because models may become more efficient and they may take less energy, etc. But then in total, consumption still increases just because of the size, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I think fascinating things. And also, I mean, I'm glad you pointed out to the power piece, because that's something we take very seriously also in the book, right? Because I think no matter, I mean, so basically, AI can do lots of good things and lots of not so good things in the field of ecology, in the field of sort of social justice, in the education. But in the end, these power shifts, right? What do malicious actors actually do, right? what does that mean for democracy? Also has an influence on all these areas, right? Like education, science, social justice, etc. And so I almost see this as two levels of impact, right? And so this second level, this power level, perhaps potentially is actually much more important, right? Than what goes on in a more like technology space, right? Because we've seen, we've seen a shift in power from governments to corporations, for quite some time, and in many ways, by many measures, corporations are much more powerful than governments, right?
Correct.
In terms of their population size, or in terms of their followership, or in terms of their client base, or whatever, right? They have more people basically than countries have citizens, right? Or residents. And then the financial one is key, and then of course data is key. And in the last 10 years, we've seen this enormous shift from the sort of the oil and gas and car companies, etc., now to the big tech firms being the most sort of powerful ones in terms of market capitalization, for example. And do we really want this, right? And when we talk about power, we also need to talk about military power. And of course, AI is used very majorly by the military, right? And we see now also this how like the two sectors, right? Government, military, government, and big tech firms are also becoming intertwined. I think Eric Schmidt, isn't it? The former Google CEO, right? He's now a military advisor to the US, and then of course means only governments and countries that can actually afford all these tools, all these data sets will benefit. Yeah. So that I think is a fascinating piece, but it's also a bit scary. So yeah, we look at that also in the book.
Correct. Because see, the main point which actually comes in my mind is like, okay, when nuclear weapons actually came into being, like there was a strict regulation, okay, like which all countries have that, and when they have it, what all things they have to actually keep in mind. So exactly like this, this is the era of AI war at this moment. Like big tech firms like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Apple, they all have it. And what about the companies which is like lying in the middle? So the rich is actually getting more richer because they have it. So literally we have seen like over, so I think last November or December ChatGPT got released, and after that, just think of it like they introduce ChatGPT plugin or ChatGPT services on all the Microsoft products actually, everywhere, everything, and they literally captured the entire market for so many platforms, so many tools. So think of it in that perspective. They actually got that, and the ChatGPT free version which we are getting, it's a beautiful prototype which everyone will actually get addicted to using or buying these services into their products. So whenever this, so all these things came, the moment it actually came, then all the dating apps started using it, all the editing apps started using it, all the other like serious business related applications started using it, everyone everywhere it started integrating. Actually even in education kind of platforms, actually they started doing questionnaires, question answering, everything. So literally power resides, actually there's a shift, so that shift happened. And at the same time open source contributions also, like okay, they need to actually tag with, okay, then what happened, Google actually came up with the bard model, and bard model was actually not coming up really impressive just like ChatGPT. Then they have to take a step back, and still imagine like Google search engine is there, and I really don't know. Like Bing search engine was there, but now the prominence of Bing search engine have so increased actually because of ChatGPT. Earlier, no one even used Bing search engine, but now because of ChatGPT, people started using it, and even the way we search things changed, right? Because
Yeah.
earlier it was like we search and we find out, we know what is the relevant link, we make sure that this is the one, and we take the what to say, the final word. But now it's like, okay, I have a doubt, I'll ask ChatGPT, I'll ask this question, okay, what is the difference between fission and fusion, I'll ask this ChatGPT. So what ChatGPT is giving the answer, that's what we are actually taking for, like, so the, the entire shift kind of like in a different way. Like we are not realizing that we are actually being like a end user, which kind of giving them so much potential that these richer firms kind of becoming more and more richer with their platforms and services.
Exactly.
So
I think a lot of people don't see this, right? And a lot of
correct,
people talk about sort of the sort of very different types of risks of AI, right? AI taking over and the debate when this will be and AGI, etc. But they don't see these more immediate risks, right? Of
correct,
polarizing power, for example. Yeah. And
correct,
who benefits? I think this is the question, right? And of course, I mean, spreading fake news, misinformation, manipulating elections, all of that has become so much easier now also, unfortunately, with tools like ChatGPT. Yeah, and there's a clear risk that people dumb down a bit. Yeah, so we have to work hard to not let this happen.
correct.